Hello, scrappers, recyclers. Welcome, members of the Shiver. This is Shark Scrapper, and we're on Shark Scrapper Live, where every week we talk about things that are going on in the precious metals industry, industrial metals, safety, and the industry that we are so much a part of. It is great to be with you this week. I do apologize for last week. I had some medical issues resulting, well, it sort of stemmed out of my time when I was in the Navy. And basically, I was kind of blind in one eye. And so the doc had put me on chair rest, if you will. I wasn't allowed to do any texting, reading, fine work. I wasn't supposed to be absolutely no heavy lifting and things like that, and was constantly putting eye drops in my eyes. So it was a uncomfortable time to say the least. And the other challenge there was I had to sleep sitting up. So that sucks, man. I tell you what. Anyway, we're getting better. We are improving greatly, and I've been cleared to go back to somewhat normal business. So it is great to be with you all. I really missed seeing everybody last week. I want to catch up here. Scrapping Irish, Roger, E-Waste, Mike. Welcome everybody. It's great to have you here. E-Waste Owen, great to have you here. We've got a really fun show lined up. It's going to be really interesting. We're going to talk about silver. We're going to talk about aluminum. And we are going to talk about what's going on with the tariff situation. And our electrical, well, let's wait till we get to the electrical. That's going to be a fun discussion. All right, without any further hanging around and waiting, let us get on with our precious metals discussion. We are talking about silver, and here we are on the AppMex website. Now, you all know that I start out with the AppMex website. I am not sponsored by AppMex. I don't get any money from AppMex. They are just one of several companies that I have used when I buy and sell my physical gold and silver, which is the only way that I recommend anyone hold precious metals, is in their physical form in your hands. The paper certificates, well, there's just more paper certificates than there is silver out there right now. So good luck getting your money back on that. And if your physical silver or gold is being held by somebody else in their banks and you can't walk in and get it, you don't own it. So that's my philosophy on it. And I do believe that everybody should have a little bit, at least some amount of gold and silver in their portfolio, either as a hedge against inflation or other purposes. Now, right now we see that silver is down for the 24-hour period, and we can see that decline, a little bit jagged, but pretty steady decline going on there. If we look at the 3-day period, we're down 0.6. We've got quite a bit of movement going on here, but this is where you see here in the later part, this is where you see that decline really start to play out. And then slight uptick here near the end if you look at it from the 3-day perspective. On the week, we are up 3%. And on the month, we are up 6.5%. And you can see that there were some dips in here, but generally speaking, we're climbing up through the month. Well, let's go on over to our trading economics chart where we can put on the candlesticks and try to get a little better sense of what we're seeing going on here. We're going to zoom in here. Right now, this is a 1-year chart, and every candlestick represents a day. So if we zoom in here towards the period that's closer to us, what we can see is a certain amount of volatility as prices dropped back here in October, started picking up in November, going into December, dropping off again, coming into the new year. And now from the new year, we've been slowly picking up Each of these green candlesticks is pretty big, well encompassing the red candlesticks ahead of it. So this suggests that we've got more upward movement going on our silver. So it really does look like we've got the potential for silver to keep growing. Let's see, what do the analysts have to say? Silver remained above 31.4 on Friday, hovering near a 7 week high. As Donald Trump has reiterated his threat. Now we know it wasn't a threat. He's actually implemented the tariffs on Mexico and Canada and China. And so what that tends to do is that tends to drive investors towards kind of safe haven things like silver and gold. And this is why we should expect that silver and gold prices will continue to increase. Um, the other thing that's affecting silver is that you have strong industrial demand and the retail investment that we talked about. Industrial demand in things like solar panels, electric vehicles, and consumer electronics. Plus, adding on to that is the silver supply is still inadequate. They're not mining enough silver to feed the demand signal that's going on. Why is that good for us? Well, we don't like to say that we scrap our silver, but it should lead to increased prices for silver, which should help overall with our electrical waste, because there is silver in a lot of the electrical waste that we recycle. So that should help. In addition to the gold prices going up, that should help for our world of scrapping and recycling and what happens with prices for us. I am not going to be buying silver right now. This is above my buy threshold, and I'm not selling either. So right now I am holding, and I think it's probably a pretty good time to be holding. All right, let's take a quick look at what is likely to happen. What do the analysts show for a forecast here? And that's this part of the chart right here. Let me highlight that for you. This part of the chart right here is their forecast, showing it going up to 30, almost 35 an ounce. And let's see, what are they saying? Let's see. Silver is expected to trade at 32.09 by the end of this quarter. Looking forward, we estimate it to trade around 34.6 in the 12-month time frame. So not a huge increase in silver, but this is, these are still pretty good numbers, right? I like to buy my silver when it's in the 20s, so this is well above the buy threshold. And I like to sell when I'm up in the 40s to 50 range. So, we're pushing closer to that sell range. All righty, so let's see what's going on over here in the chat when we are looking at silver. Scrap and Pal Man, Paul, welcome. Great to have you here, man. Let's see, anybody chatting about what they're going to do with silver? Let's see here. Mikey, welcome. Great to have you here, man. Anybody doing anything with their silver here? Don't see any comments about. Oh, wait a minute. Here we are. Richard Hulbert. Richard, welcome. Great to have you here. Still collecting silver in the hopes it rises in value. No sense losing money to get it now. Yeah, I'm in agreement. If you can get your silver from sources other than buying it from a coin dealer or a bullion dealer or something like that, that's great, right? If you have ways to get material that is silver bearing and you know how to extract that silver, you got to factor in your cost of chemicals and stuff. But it's a good way to get your silver. Let's see. E-Waste Owen is saying he's going to wait till it gets to can wait until it hits that cup and handle $50 high. Yep. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for. And E-Way Stone is saying that he's got about 70 ounces. Very cool. That's a nice little stack. Nice little stack going there. All righty now. Oh, Mike. I missed you, Mike. Oh, man. All righty. So, um, Electronic Scrapper, welcome to the show, man. Great to have you here. All right. So, there's a lot going on with silver, and we will see how that plays out. Let's move on over to our safety discussion. And this is kind of, as you all know, throughout the week, I observe things that are going on either directly with me or in the world around me. And that helps to inform me of what the safety subject will be for the week. This week, I don't know how many of you saw it. Scrapping Scotland had a video out this last week, and he was scrapping like a battery operated scooter thing. He went to cut through a bunch of the cords, and he had not disconnected the battery. And so there was a beautiful fireworks display. Now, fortunately, he was not injured, but according to his video, he did have to change his shorts. So I don't know why he was scrapping in shorts in Scotland. Anyway, so that led me to my safety subject of the week, electrical safety. Now, there's some very key points to electrical safety that we need to think about. Um, you know, if you remember from your depending upon your education system, either in high school or college, you learned the equation V equals IR. So voltage equals current times resistance. That's a very important formula when we talk about electrical safety, because it's the current running through your body that can hurt you. So what can increase the current running through your body? Well, if you have higher voltage. So higher voltage for the same amount of resistance would mean higher current, which would mean more potential impacts to your body. What changes the resistance of you as a human has a lot to do with the clothes you're wearing, if you're wet, what you're standing on. So those kind of things can have a huge influence in what electric shock, electricity can do to you. Plus, it's the path that the electricity takes through your body that is also of concern. If the path goes, say, through your hand and down your torso, out one of your feet, it will very likely impact your heart. And if it is high enough amperage, it could throw off your heart rhythm, perhaps even stop your heart and lead to death. So you've got the combination of the voltage, the current, your resistance, your body resistance, and the path that it takes through your body that affect how dangerous the electricity can be for you. This is just some AI generated comments on key points about electrical hazards, faulty wiring. We've never seen faulty wiring in our scrapping world, have we? How many of you have extension cords right now in your shop that you have taped over with duct tape or electrician's tape multiple times? Come on, be honest. Overloaded circuits. Oh, we never overload our circuits in our shops, do we? I mean, holy cow, how many times have I seen a two plug socket where somebody has put a power strip on one that has another 8 plugs and they're all full, and another power strip on the other one, and they got stuff plugged into all those. I mean, come on, talk about overloading. Damaged insulation, we talked about that. Improper grounding. That used to be a real big deal when tools were made out of metal bodies. It's not as problematic now, but there are still a number of pieces of electrical equipment that, if they're not properly grounded, you can get shocked from them. Overhead power lines, you if you're operating a crane or tall, a truck, and you've got a tall load on the back of your truck, you need to be very careful of overhead power lines. Wet conditions where there's electricity around can be very dangerous. Damaged tools and equipment, and lightning storms, because the lightning strikes you, it's going to go, through your body, and well, that's not a good thing either. So you have all of these conditions that play in electrical safety, and it's very important that we just pay attention. In our shops, we can watch. In our shops, we just inspect your tools, your extension cords. If you have put multiple power strips off of a plug, and you've got every one of those strips loaded and energizing, well, maybe think about making some changes there. One of the Here in the United States, one of the OSHA standard things was that you could not, in factory setting, you could not have an extension cord used as a permanent energy source. You needed to have move a plug closer to that piece of equipment so that that piece of equipment could plug directly into the power source, or you move the equipment closer to the power source. And there's a lot of times in manufacturing settings where, you see these extension cords that run, from a plug all the way over to a piece of equipment, and they don't ever get taken away. It just becomes a part of the circuit planning. So you need to, if necessary, do some rewiring in your shop to make sure that you've accounted for that. Also, make sure that your building you're in can carry the load for the equipment that you're using. I know there's a lot of folks that feel like they can go ahead and fix electrical things. But if you're in a commercial setting, especially, you need to make sure that a licensed electrician has done the work, because you can be inspected and you can be shut down for safety or fire hazards if you're not up to code. And there's interesting aspects of code that the electricians licensed electricians understand, whereas the rest of us, we may understand electricity, but we may not understand the codes. All right, what kind of comments has this generated? Mr. Matthews, welcome. Mr. Matthews, we're talking about electricity, so you might want to be careful. Scrapping Scotland is saying, if you think about it, I'm actually saving lives, as nobody is going to be as stupid as me and repeat that. I would like to believe that's true, but as you and I talked about in our comment exchange on that, most scrappers have to learn the lesson for themselves. How many of you in the chat have shocked yourself either because you cut through an energized power cord, or had forgotten to remove the batteries from something before you cut through the cord, or you were using some damaged piece of electrical? Just go me. Just drop a comment and say me. I want to see how many of us have actually had to learn this lesson the hard way. And I'm in there, okay? I've learned the lesson the hard way. So we'll see how many me's pop up here on folks that have been shocked. That's fine, Ian. We know that you've done it multiple times. In the world of learning our lessons, I'm not quite sure, why you're such a slow learner there. And here's an interesting question. We always say that we pay the scrap gods in blood, but what about electric shocks? I mean, they can create bleeding injuries, I suppose. So maybe there is some payment to the scrap gods for that. Yeah, and Mike is saying that he would never have that happen because safety is his middle name. Yes, you can see that when he uses his grinder with no shield or eye protection. All right. So, what I would like to ask is this week, everybody just take a few minutes and go through your shop and just ask yourself, is there anything I can clean up here that would make my shop a little bit safer? What can I do to avoid the potential for the accident? Because a lot of times our electrical accidents are, um, because we haven't cleaned the shop or we haven't cleared our work area and things got confused and we were cutting cords that we didn't know were plugged in. The other thing is adapt a policy in your brain that says if there's a battery or a plug, I want to make sure that the battery is disconnected or the plug is unplugged before I work on this thing. It should be the first thing we do now. Um, I learned that lesson the hard way. And some of you may recall my video from a couple years ago where I cut a battery cord while the battery was still connected. It was, not as bad as scrapping Scotland. That was a good one. I mean, that was impressive, but got my attention. Uh, and Grandpa Kevin is saying that he changed to 50 amp dryer outlet, lost a screwdriver when it hit the live wire. Yeah, yep, and it turned off the breaker. Well, that's why we have fuses and breakers, and that's why Mr. Matthews loves all of the fuses that people send to him. By the way, if you have any fuses, send them all on to Mr. Matthews, Ian Matthews. He loves fuses. And speaking of Ian Matthews, he brings up a really good point here: capacitors. You want to make sure that you short out capacitors. This used to be a really big deal in old TV sets. Those capacitors could pack a real wallop. It was one of the things that TV repairmen, one of the first things they would do is they would go through and short out, discharge capacitors in a TV set before they work on it. Even if you find a TV set now and somebody says, "Oh, it hasn't been plugged in ages," don't trust it. Okay, just short out that capacitor because that could be that. It's amazing how long some capacitors can hang on to a charge. I mean, it's like almost as long as wives can hang on to something that you did wrong. Oh, I said that outside, didn't I? Oh no. I hope Mrs. Shark doesn't watch this. So go through your shop, do a little house cleaning, check your power cords, check your extensions, check the loading that you have on your circuits, and try to make yourself a little more aware of the potential for damage that is in front of you from electricity. Oh yeah, yeah. So here we are on the TV comment. Richard got burned by one of those capacitors, blew a hole in his finger. Man, that's yeah. I bet you that. I bet you cussed. I bet you said a nasty word. Um, Freaking awesome! Welcome to the show. Great to have you. Yeah, rubber handled tools are definitely a must. Um, Make sure that the tools you're using are insulated in some fashion, and the ladders. Don't forget your ladders. Um, if you look at most electricians, they use these fiberboard ladders. They used to use the wooden ladders. Now they're, fiberboard ladders are, or fiberglass ladders. They're much tougher. They can hold more weight. And they're much higher resistance values. So If you're using one of the lightweight aluminum ladders, like so many of us have, yeah, be careful there because that aluminum ladder is going to conduct electricity extremely well. Aluminum is what, the third best conductor in the common metals group. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the third best conductor. Uh, okay, let's get on to our discussion of precious, our industrial metals. And our industrial metal for today is aluminum. You know what's funny? I saw a video this last week where a historian, it's a channel where this historian talks about um, words and the etymology of the words, where words came from. And he did an episode on aluminum and where it started and how it became aluminium, and then now aluminum. And I just think it's hilarious, the history behind this word, and even to this day, people can get into it over, is it aluminum, is it aluminium? I think a lot of us have just said, it's alley. So, whether you say it as aluminum or aluminium, you're not wrong. I mean, it's correct to pronounce it either way that you want to. But let's go over and talk about aluminum. Here's the chart. We're looking at a 1-year chart here. So this is pricing for a year. And we're going to turn on the candlesticks. Each candlestick is going to represent 1 day of trading within that year. We see that aluminum futures held below the 2,600 per ton threshold. Now, remember that a lot of the way, because aluminum is an industrial metal, it's not a price fixed by a group of people. It is what the industry bears. And so as manufacturers buy aluminum, they put out contracts for the aluminum that they're going to need in the future. And then the people that trade in aluminum, buy and sell the aluminum trying to meet the contracts. And then aluminum is stored like with the London Metal Exchange and moved around as to the industries as they're needed. So let's see, like you pull back in base metals, let's see, outweighing the risk of global supply. Okay, so essentially what's going on here is that we've got a push, pull, push me, pull you kind of thing going on where you've got some industries slowing down, others picking up. What's that going to do to the production of the amount of aluminum that's necessary to satisfy those demands? We've got the impact of the tariffs from the United States and what that is going to do. And we're going to have a discussion on tariffs here in a little bit. So hold your comments and discussion on tariffs and the tariff impacts on the aluminum market. We're going to specifically talk about tariffs in a little bit here. But you've got these pros and con influences going on in the market right now, and then you've got China that produced a record high of 44 million tons of aluminum last year. So they need to kind of slow down their input because they pushed a lot of aluminum out into the market. They don't want to create a glut because that will drop the prices. And then, of course, you've got the European Union sanctioning Russia, Russia being a big supplier of aluminum, and they're being sanctioned because of the war in Ukraine. So you've got a lot of things that are playing into what's going on in the world of aluminum right now. And when we look at the aluminum price chart down here, this is pretty clear when you see that kind of volatility going on here. Lots of ups and downs going on here with aluminum. And you can just, you just, that's what happens when you have such a confused world going on. Let's kind of zoom in here to the later part of this period. And what I again, I'm not trying to teach people how to read candlestick charts, but what's interesting to me is when I see these such big candlesticks, remember that each one of these candlesticks represents a day of trading. And so when you see look at this big red one here. Prices started up here, dropped all the way down here. That's a lot of movement in one day. Now we go up here to November 15th, and we see prices started down here and ended way up here. Again, that's a huge candlestick relative to all the other candlesticks around it. So that's a lot of movement, and going on there. And now we see here we are in early January, and you've got you don't have much movement at all. Look how small these candlesticks are, but they're going up and they're going up. And now we've got this climb, and now they're starting to drop off again. I think here, what is this, January 21? So here we have industry is starting to say, well, we might have these tariffs coming. What are we going to do here? What's going on? So the market starts getting confused. Let's take a look at this from a big picture. Here's 10 years. Here's 10 years of the aluminum market. You can see we had a big spike back here in 2022. And so from a 10-year perspective, we're not in very high areas here for aluminum. So, it's, we're definitely not down in the lows. So, we're kind of in this mid area here. All right, well, I'm going to get rid of the candlesticks real quick, and I want to take a look at what they're saying for a forecast. That's kind of hard to see on that scale. Let me go back here to the 1 year. All right, so what we see for a forecast is that aluminum prices should continue to rise. So we're looking at this part of the chart right here. And we should see aluminum prices coming up, but nothing huge, nothing fantastic in the next year. Prices should get up to where they were back in May of 2024, is what they're saying. So what does that mean for us in our scrap world? It kind of means that keep your aluminum moving. There's going to be some increases in the pricing, but as you saw from those candlestick charts, there's a lot of volatility going on. And your scrapyard will have made contracts to sell aluminum to mills. Many of these contracts are made, for a period of a quarter or a half a year or a year, and your mill is trying to purchase the materials to feed their mill. Your scrapyard is trying to sell a certain amount of material every week, every month, every quarter, depending upon their contracts. And so, you just need to keep feeding that beast. I don't see any huge movement one way or the other that would say you should be holding your aluminum or dump all your aluminum. I treat aluminum as a cash flow metal. And so from my perspective, I'm just going to, when my bin is full, I'm going to take it in and sell it. Get the money that I need to keep the cash flow going in my shop to help pay my bills. So let's see what kind of comments we've had come in on the chat while I've been talking about aluminum. Let's see. So Ralph Morick is saying that it was officially changed to aluminium, but like with many things, the USA stayed behind. Well, I don't know what you would say officially changed. Just because one country decided to call it aluminium doesn't mean that every country in the world had to then say, okay, we're going to call it aluminium. Um, so yes, there were scholars that decided that we're going to start calling it aluminium. But when you study the history of why they decided to call it aluminium, it's actually kind of funny. Um, and there wasn't a whole lot of good reasoning behind it. And it kind of came down to, well, we want this to sound more sophisticated, so we're going to throw an extra syllable in there. So, whether that was official or not, that's your call. Let's see here. Ba, 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 ba. We got some talk going on by an accident here, so that must have been more on the electrical stuff. So, uh, well, I can only imagine what that was going on. Yeah, Richard, I'm not quite sure that that fits. Yeah, we are scrappers and recyclers, and so yes, we drink. Um, and fast women in hot cars. Well, hot cars might be part of our scrapping world, but yeah, I'm not sure that fits the context of the live stream. Oh man. Freaking also remembers when aluminum was over $1. Yep, yep. And now the best he's getting is 55 cents. Um, the other interesting thing too is how some yards can be very sophisticated in the way they buy the aluminum, um, even to the point where they might be grading it by the alloy. Whereas, other yards, it's just like, no, it's aluminum. They don't even separate it by cast or sheet in some cases. Um, and then you have insulated aluminum wire versus the wire, and you have aluminum cans or used beverage containers. UBC is the industry term. So it's interesting, amongst our yards, the way they buy it and how much they're buying it for. So I'm also curious, does your yard, how sophisticated is the yard that you normally work with? And do they want you to separate by alloy? I don't know how you would do that if you don't have an XRF gun. So I think for most scrappers, the best you're going to be able to do is separate by sheet or cast or dirty, and wire. I mean, I don't know how the yard would expect you to do much more than that. And one of the yards that I used to sell to down in Florida, they didn't even care if there was zinc in my aluminum. It's just like, yeah, whatever, just throw it all in there. Um, so Freaking Austin says, I'm paying, here, wait a minute, let me get this up here. He says, I'm paying attention, Shark Scrapper. I'm just a distraction. Oh, man. They have different categories. Okay. Yep. Yep. And Scrapping Scotland is saying that he's got just one category. Uh huh. Um, Roger is saying that the thing I hate is they lump it all together as clean aluminum, but when you watch them take it the back, they sort it into different boxes. Um, so I get it. I that would frustrate me too. Um, it's one of the reasons why when I buy boards, printed circuit boards, I, like board sort, offer to pay by the specific category of the board. Now, I will pay a price for mixed boards if a person doesn't want to take the time to separate their own boards. I have a fee that I put in there for me separating the boards because then I'm going to separate them, afterwards to make more money. So if a yard gives you the option to separate them and pay you by category, great. But if they don't have that option, if it's just one price, but then they're doing the separating, I don't know. That just seems like that just doesn't seem, it doesn't seem fair. And Roger, maybe you can talk with the yard and say, hey guys, I'm not new here. I know how to separate my aluminum. Can we work out something where I can get reasonable prices for separated aluminum? They may say no, we're not going to do it. This is the way we do it for everybody, no exceptions. But I'll bet you that yard does make exception for their industrial customers, their clients that are bringing in, factory type aluminum cutoffs and stuff. So yeah, I get really frustrated with that too, Roger. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. And of course, if they're the only yard in town, then what are you going to do? You're kind of stuck. Um, Homer's Reluctant Odyssey. They have extruded, clip, sheet, siding, cast, and ironing. Yeah, and I don't know if Mike is going to mention it when we get down. If Mike has mentioned it, but a lot of yards will have what they call MLC as another type. So. And then the other one that was weird to me. This happened a couple years ago. I had a yard that was buying my copper aluminum heat sinks off of the computers. They were giving me copper aluminum pricing for that. And then they said, yeah, no, we're not going to do that anymore. And they went to refinery. So that was just, that was weird why they decided to do that. Let's see. Richard, a guy who worked for me, got a better job working for the power company. He buried lines and he would call me and tell me where to go to get the scrap. Oh yeah, yeah, I can see that. I've just invested in having a whole home generator installed, and when they were installing the generator, I asked the installer, because they had to run the power cord from one end of the house to the other, and so I said, "Hey, did I pay for that complete run of aluminum wire?" And he said, "Yep, that was in your bill." And I said, "Great, leave all the cutoffs here. They're mine." So yeah, whenever you can get a good connection at one of the power companies or something that can, get you that information, that's good. As long as, now be careful that that employee isn't doing anything wrong either. Um, I think it would be. I don't think the power companies are just allowed to leave their trash laying around. So most power companies are cleaning up their waste after themselves. Having said that, as you've seen in some of my videos, when they pulled the power lines from behind the neighborhood here, yeah, they pulled the main line, but wherever they ran into a snag or they had to cut sections to free up hangs and things like that, they were leaving that stuff just laying around back there. Of course, I then did my civic duty and went around and picked it all up. Oh, let's see here. William, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. With any metal, it all depends on what the buyer has and the seller has equipment wise to separate. Yeah, that's a very good point. A very good point, William. Not all yards are going to be able to categorize the metal by alloy because they would require something like an XRF gun or some other analysis tool. And so in some cases, they may not have made that investment. That equipment can be very expensive. And so they may not do anything more than separate it, by the physical form of the aluminum, which is really interesting because, aluminum, you've got sheet aluminum, cast aluminum, and then different alloys of aluminum are used in the different forms because of the characteristics of that aluminum. So it is kind of a way of separating by alloy, but not really, because You don't know what the alloy is until you test the alloy. Andrew Powell, welcome. Great to have you here. Andrew's coming to us from New Zealand, over on the other direction, the other big pond. Um, let's see. Thank you, Freaking Awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed the video. I have a lot of fun putting the videos together. And I get a lot of good feedback and comments on them that I constantly learn from as well. So I really enjoy it. Thank you for the input. Let's see. Yep, there's Mike makes the comment about MLC, and Roger is saying at his yard MLC is the same as clip. That's the other thing that I think is so interesting in this industry is how we have all these different terminologies for things that are essentially the same thing. Here you see MLC is clip, clip is MLC. Aluminum cans are are frequently referred to as used beverage containers, UBC, in certain industry standards. And it's funny sometimes when I talk to folks from the industry, and they're throwing out the terms, and it's almost like they're trying to decide if you understand the industry enough. But that just may not be the term in your region or locale. And so when I first started doing this, I was allowing myself to be a little intimidated by it. But then as I got a little bit smarter, I realized, there's regional terms for the same thing. And just because one yard calls it one thing doesn't mean that the other yard isn't calling it the right thing. And that makes it difficult for us as scrappers because we need to understand those differences ourselves when we're deciding who we're going to do business with. So, well, you got another good point there, William, when you say that it's all based on volume separation. Certainly when a large, like an industrial partner to a scrapyard, when they're bringing in truckloads of material, they can get and negotiate better prices than what many scrappers are going to get bringing in a carload of material. Or even a pickup load of material. So that's a very good point. Okay, you know what? We need to bust on over here to our discussion of tariffs. Now, one thing I want to say right up front. You all know, for those of you that have been with me for a while, you know that I don't do politics on this channel. And we're not going to do politics here. For those of you that are new to my channel, I don't do politics on this channel. This is about scrapping and recycling in our industry. Now, politics does have an impact on our industry. The decisions of our lawmakers and our governments around the world impact how we get paid, what happens with the material, the safety standards, the environmental standards, everything that we operate in. So I'm not saying that politics isn't a part of what we do, but I don't talk politics here in the sense of this person's right, that person's wrong, this is stupid, this is, I don't do that here. But these tariffs are going to have some impact on what we do in this industry. So we need to talk about it. And I owe you that discussion. I'm not going to, shy away from it. So I think the first thing that we ought to do here is, because this is a U.S. thing, let's take a quick look at what's the magnitude of what we're talking about here. I found this chart from Trading Economics. It is U.S. imports, and the interesting thing here is if you look at the three countries that this administration imposed the tariffs on, you have Mexico and Canada that had 25% tariff imposed, although Canadian oil or Canadian energy is only getting a 10% tariff, and then you have China, which got a 10% tariff placed on it. And they account for a large portion of the imports coming into the United States. So, this has a huge impact both on on these countries and on U.S. Um, let's talk for just a minute about how tariffs work. Um, the idea behind a tariff is that when a country imposes a tariff, it raises the cost of the imported good. As that cost goes up, there is supposed to come a point where domestic companies enter that market because now it should be less expensive for a domestic company to be able to produce that good and compete against the imported goods. And then there's a space in there where the government will collect those import taxes, and that can help pay for the federal government. In a perfect world, then you come to this sort of balance point where the domestic good offsets the cost of the imported good. You have more people domestically being hired to produce that good, and then you can adjust accordingly. Now, how it actually happens, though, in practice, well, there are some historical examples. When I was researching this, I read several pieces about the chicken tax, which I thought was really, really interesting. Um, After World War II, chickens in Europe were really expensive. Whereas in the United States, because we had gone into a industrial farm kind of setting, and we were cranking out a lot of chickens, we were able to produce so many chickens that we could sell the chickens in Europe much less expensive than domestically grown chickens. So countries in Europe, Germany, France, they all decided, well, we're going to put a tariff on chickens. And so they put a tariff on U.S. chickens. And that was supposed to allow the European chicken farmers to get back on their feet after the war and produce more chickens and be able to, offset. Well, the United States said, well, that's not very fair. We don't like that. So the United States imposed a tariff on small trucks. And the result of that was that, we're all of an age where we can remember where there used to be these VW buses where the back half was gone and it was like a pickup truck. Well, that market couldn't compete now because there was such a high tariff on those small trucks that the imports couldn't survive, and U.S. manufacturing companies started moving into the truck world. Now, what U.S. manufacturers did was they they played some games trying to get around the imports by bringing in, say, just a chassis, and then that Japanese or that European chassis would then get an American body, and then eventually, the government found out about that loophole, and I think it was Carter that put an end to that loophole. And so then what they would do is they would bring in vans that were passenger vans. And then once they got into the United States as a passenger van, they would be overhauled, the seats ripped out, the windows taken off, sides put on, and they would become cargo vans. But they would be already in the US, so they wouldn't have had to pay the import tax. And because there was only three, real automobile manufacturers in the United States, it wasn't as if the U.S. automobile industry was able to or had to open up a lot of new plants and increase the labor market. Yeah, there were more jobs that came from it, but there weren't that many more jobs that were produced. It's just that we started producing more trucks instead of sedans. And now the result is that if you look around the streets now, you see all kinds of trucks out there being driven by people that have no business driving trucks. And when we look for a work truck, it's freaking expensive as hell. So um, there are reasons, legitimate reasons, why countries will impose tariffs on goods, especially if a country, like China, is artificially reducing the cost of a good because they don't enforce labor standards. They have a huge population that's willing to work for much less than the U.S. worker. Their government has so offset their industries that those industries can build up much cheaper, much less expensively, and produce things like steel and aluminum and other goods at a much more reduced market and dump it onto the world below what the rates should be. That's an example of when a tariff makes perfectly good sense. When you see a company dumping goods into the market like that, other countries will impose a tariff to try to change the behavior of that country and become more aligned with a balance. Um, a Another example that is one that we have lived with, and many of us didn't know this, was in 2018. There was a tariff put on washing machines coming into the United States, and the result of that was that there was the in a year that resulted in something on the order of 1.5 billion dollars, and of that there was like 82 million dollars of additional tax benefit to the U.S. government, but 1.5 billion dollars that was that the American consumer ended up paying. So it cost the American consumer because what happened was not it's not that the U.S. manufacturers of washing machines, you know, didn't raise their prices too. So when the import price of the washing machine went up, well, the U.S. manufacturers raised their prices too. So the U.S. consumer ended up paying more for washing machines. Now, there was a benefit. There were 1,800 new jobs created from that tariff. But when you figure in what it cost the United States, it meant that each one of those new jobs cost $815,000 to make. There's a lot less expensive ways to create jobs than using the tariff. So there are good, legitimate reasons to use tariffs. And then there are other things that go on with tariffs that can cause problems beyond what the tariff is intended to solve. And the other thing that I found here, the World Integrated Table, this is because it takes a little while to get data. We're looking back at 2022 here, but what I thought was interesting about this chart is we go in and we see Canada, and we can go over here to this table here, and we go down to Canada. We click on Canada, and we can see what the imports were. And over here, you can see what the dollar values were for the particular thing. So fuels and raw materials and consumer goods. And then, and here's metals. And, metals is something that we're really interested in. And with this chart, if you click on metals, then you can come over and you can, see the country, how much of the percentage of the metals that the countries are bringing in. So if you're interested in this, this is wits.worldbank.org. If you want to go, look at this yourself and follow up on that. Let's go up here and see what kind of comments we had coming up on the. Let's see here. We had some good comments on the aluminum and things that were going on with the aluminum market here, which is very cool. So this is a good point that Richard is bringing up, and one that I wanted to talk about here real quick. Most of the cars are built in Mexico. Many parts are built in Canada. All the material comes from China. So the um, the point here is that our automobile supply chains are very complex and global. And so it's not at all uncommon now for parts to move across either the Canadian or the Mexican border multiple times. And what's going to happen now, based on the what we've seen in the last couple of days here, is when that part comes from Canada into the United States, it's going to get a 25% tariff put on it. The automobile manufacturer does something, it goes back to Canada for the next step, gets another 25% put on it. Canada does whatever gets done in the manufacturing plant in Canada, comes back to the United States, there's another 25% getting put on it. So you can see how this quickly gets out of control. And things like cars or the parts that we need to fix our cars can become very expensive very quickly. So that's why trade wars can be very complicated. And if not managed with accuracy and intent and targeted, they can create a lot of havoc in a world market. And automobiles are a perfect example of how this can play out now. Ian, you are correct that the person who pays for the tariff is the consumer. And that's true in every country out there, because the company that is paying the tariff when the good comes in, because that's how it works, right? When that product comes into your country, in this case, comes in the United States, it's the importer that pays the tariff. And then they pass that cost on to the consumer because they're not going to eat that cost. That's going to reduce their profit margins. Some companies might, eat some of it in order to not pass all of it on right away. But yeah, you can pretty much be sure the consumer is the one who's going to pay that. Now, I have seen a number of articles out there in the news where companies were stockpiling goods because Trump was really pushing the agenda, the issue of tariffs. A lot of companies in preparation were stockpiling goods, but you can only stockpile so much. And what I'm a little bit concerned may happen now is, even though these companies stockpiled materials, they're going to use this as an excuse to increase our costs right away, even though they didn't pay that tariff on some of those goods. So material that's sitting in a warehouse that came here already, they may jack the prices up and we end up paying for it, even though it didn't get taxed already. So I'm a little bit worried about that with some of the companies that are out there. Um, eh, um, so let's see. It is time. Oh man, it is time. Hey, folks, I just noticed that we are 3 minutes after the hour. So, what we're going to do is we're going to head over to Ireland. We're going to cross the pond. If you have autoplay enabled, when I shut the stream down here in a minute, you will be automatically redirected to Ireland, where we can join Scrapping Irish and continue the discussion or go into other avenues. Who knows what's going to happen, because you never know who's going to come up on Irish's panel or where the conversations are going to go. So it's been a great pleasure. I've enjoyed the discussion. Hopefully you have a little better idea of tariffs. And again, all politics aside, hopefully you have a little better understanding now of what will go on with tariffs and the complications that are going to go on out there. I look forward to seeing all of you over in Ireland. If I don't see you over there, be safe. Have a great